Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. Do we have a clearer idea of what happened at Satyam? What does the future of the company look like? And beyond that, what are the lessons we need to learn? Those are the three key issues I shall explore today with one of the new directors of Satyam and a former president of NASSCOM, Kiran Karnik. Mr. Karnik, let's start with what happened at Satyam. From all that you've been able to discover, do you believe Ramalinga Raju's confession that the accounts were cooked to show that the company possessed 7,000 crore more than it had? Or was that sum of money siphoned out?
I should tell you that we have not gone into the investigation that's being handled by various arms of the government, and we have not looked into the investigative part at all. We don't even have a firm picture from the balance sheets now because they're being put together. So my frank answer to you at the moment would be, we don't know. The fact is only that there is very little money at the moment in the company.
So you're saying to me that at this moment in time, 2 weeks after you became a director, you actually have no clear idea of what happened at Satyam?
I would say we don't. We just know the present position, but we have no idea what happened in the past. No clear idea, no definite idea.
If the profits made by Satyam were fictitious, then what about the rest of the company? Does it, for instance, have 53,000 employees? Does it have 185 Fortune 500 customers?
On the customer front, I can tell you with some sense of confidence that we have looked at it. We know many of the customers are well known. I have a sense of comfort. On all other aspects concerned with the financials, I would put a question mark behind every figure that's there. I would put a question mark on the employee number also. There is yet not a verification done. These processes are underway, but as of today, question marks.
But you are confident that the claim that it has 185 Fortune 500 customers, that is a reasonably accurate claim?
I need to check whether it's 185, but yes, the customer list that's there, the known customers, the big name customers are there. They have a lot of other smaller customers on whom we are yet to verify whether they're really there or no. But the big customers, both in terms of name and in terms of the size of the account, yes, there is comfort on that. There is actual evidence of that. And I've personally spoken to maybe a dozen or more already in the last 4 or 5 days.
But you expressed your doubts about the employee numbers. How much less than 53,000 could it turn out to be? I mean, could there be a big discrepancy? Or are we talking about small discrepancies?
The frank answer would be, Karan, I don't know, but it can't be a large discrepancy because the size of the company in terms of the business we know that they're doing would demand a certain number. But whether it's 10% less, who knows? We will know after in the course of time as these investigations go on and we put together things which we have put into place too.
You were good enough to begin by admitting that you haven't involved yourself on the investigation side. Nonetheless, you have been involved for 2 weeks. You have been looking into the state of affairs at the company. What's your feeling about Price Waterhouse? Were they simply incompetent and negligent, or could they also have been complicit?
Again, the answer is I don't know, but it is one of the two very clearly. Either there is great incompetence to have not been able to find this out, or there could be complicity. It's one or the other, because it just can't be that something of this scale, size and duration can just pass by a whole set of auditors over a long period of time.
So there's a 50% chance at least that Price Waterhouse were complicit?
I wouldn't say 50% because I wouldn't say it's necessarily half enough. But yes, there is some possibility either way of either incompetence or complicity, maybe both together.
What about the banks? Do you think that the Raju brothers may have forged documents to support their claim entirely on their own? Or is there again a chance that the banks were somehow involved in this conspiracy?
The banks that they're dealing with are, at least most of them, are big name banks with good systems of their own checks and so on. This is not to say that they're foolproof, but I would tend to think that it's unlikely for banks to have been directly involved. There are many different people, there are many things up and down in the banks, and it's more likely that the banks have not been directly involved in this.
So there are greater question marks about Price Waterhouse and fewer question marks, or perhaps none at all, about the banks?
In my assessment, yes.
Let's ask a simple question. Could this conspiracy be wider and deeper than we know? In other words, can it just be limited to the two Raju brothers and the CFO? Or could there be other people, as yet unidentified, who must have been involved?
Very hypothetical, Karan, and I don't know who can answer except the investigators. But just as a layman, if there's such a large amount involved over such a long period of time, to say it's just been done by 3 people would be extremely difficult.
So your gut instinct is that it must be wider and deeper, but you can't prove that. You certainly don't have evidence of it.
Absolutely.
But that's your gut instinct.
It would be, and I guess it would be most people. To have 3 people involved with a 7,000 crore scam for 7 years would be stretching things and making it something extraordinarily exceptional.
From your vantage point, are you satisfied with the way the investigation is going? Is it making progress? Are they looking at all the right leads? Are they pursuing them effectively?
As I said at the beginning, we are not in direct conference or in touch with the investigation, so I really don't know what's happening there in detail. It's going on. There is more than one agency of the government involved, and that's at the moment, as we are treating it a separate process. We have got into accounting firms to help us with restating or recasting the accounts, and we are focusing really at the moment on the business side of things rather than the investigative side, which is something which
All right, let's come to the business side of things. Let me ask you, today you are one of 6 on the board of directors of Satyam. You're part of the original 3. What do you identify as your primary tasks when you come to putting Satyam back in order?
I would say the overarching task for us is to ensure continuity and sustainability for customers and for employees. The two are obviously in synergy. You can't have one without the other. And that's important not just for Satyam, but indeed it's important for the signal that we send out with regard to the Indian IT industry's capability, irrespective of crisis and problems, to continue to service customers who are doing mission critical work in the country without a break and with the highest quality. And I would say that's really the highest priority. What the rest follows from that, but that's really the overarching one that we would look at.
So 1 and 2 are retaining customers and securing jobs.
Yes, that's correct.
Your colleague Deepak Parekh has gone on record to say that Satyam doesn't need a bail, but several newspapers have repeatedly quoted Ram Manmati to say that the company needs 150 crore to meet insurance health liabilities of US employees. So let me ask you bluntly, does Satyam need government money or not?
In my assessment, no, we don't need government money. At the moment, any money is welcome. We need money, but I'm not in favor of taking government money directly for the simple reason that it sends a very wrong signal to the market, to customers and to employees. Government money always seems to imply that you've got a sinking ship and there's a subsidy being pumped in to keep it artificially alive. That's not so. This is a viable going concern. There's a serious cash flow problem because money has been sucked out. And if we can take care of that over the next 2 or 3 months, then the business is enough to sustain itself as long as we can retain customers and employees.
You say there's a serious cash flow problem. How confident are you that the banks will give you the money to bridge the cash flow?
We've got a bit of a catch there because the banks see this as a viable business proposition, but they don't have the documentation because there's no balance sheet. So we've got to find a way of, at the moment, immediately, as in the next few days, getting enough money without enough documentation, and that's a huge challenge. The plus point though is that the company has huge fixed assets. It has land and buildings, and most banks would be happy to lend against that sort of physical touch and feel asset.
In the absence of documents, and if you really need the money in the next few days, you're asking banks to trust you.
No, as I said, we've got physical assets which are large and substantial.
And you're prepared to pledge them?
Yes.
If need be, even mortgage them?
We'll have to look at the modalities, but that's possible.
Have you actually spoken to 1 or 2 banks to get a specific indication of their response, or are you simply speaking from a position of generality?
The discussions are on, and I wouldn't want to say more than that at this stage, but discussions are on to look at various alternatives of raising that finance, including raising it from pledging, mortgaging, using as collateral the real estate that the company owns.
A moment ago, you referred to Satyam as a viable company. Are you therefore confident that the company can continue in business?
I'm absolutely confident. If we can see through this difficult period of a cash flow crisis, the company can not only survive, it can do well.
And as you look at that difficult period as you describe it, are you confident you can see yourself through it?
I think it's a combination of optimism and hope. But yes, I do think that, with cooperation from customers and banks, it's a very short period. We're looking at about 2.5 months. We're looking for a large amount of money in absolute terms, not a large amount in terms of the company's size, but a large amount. We do need that money. If we can get that, see us through up to March end, I'm sure we'll find the company getting on its feet. Customers will get confidence, so will employees.
This may be a slightly unfair question. You've used the word, if we can get that money to bridge us through the next 2.5 months, the company will survive. Do you have a 50% chance of getting it? Higher? Lower?
I think higher than 50%. I would rate that as much higher. I would, in fact, maybe modify the if to when.
When? So you're as confident as that?
I am confident on that.
Let me put this to you. Satyam has suffered a terrible knock. In fact, perhaps the worst imaginable knock to its reputation. How confident are you that you can retain most, leave aside all, of its customer base?
I've spoken to a dozen of the biggest customers, and I get a sense from them, based on the work they've been getting, that they would like to stay on if, again, this time I use the word if advisedly, if they have confidence that there is going to be a going concern.
And where does that confidence come from? The directors or from banks or whom?
At the moment, the confidence comes from financial things, because they know the people will stay if there is money to make sure there's salaries and there are things flowing on. And they have this from the teams that work with them, that we're happy to stay and work, but we need salaries.
But you must have seen extensive reports in the Economic Times and the Hindu which say that several large customers, many of whom have been with Satyam for 10 years and more, have actually given notice of quitting. And the estimate in the paper is that if this happens, you could lose up to 25% of your revenue. Are those reports accurate or are they misleading?
I think some of them are speculative. It is true that customers, as in any sensible persons, have a plan B, and they're talking of it what if kind of plans. But the customers I've spoken to, we have had a couple, and I would say literally two, of reasonably large customers who have given notice and are leaving. But the others are there, and many of them have indicated to me not only are they there, they would like to renew and in fact expand contracts if, and again say if, they see through this period of the next few weeks, which they recognize is the critical period that the company faces.
But you said a very important thing. You've had just two customers give notice of leaving.
Two of the large ones whom we are dealing with. There are many smaller ones, and I frankly don't know what state they are in. But among the large ones who account for a bulk of the business, 50, 60, 70% of the business, around 70% of the business is what is accounted by them. We've so far had only two leaving, and it's been now a month since things started happening. We've come on board, not 2 weeks, by the way, 8 days ago, but it's
Are
been a
you
short
in
period.
danger of having your customers poached by your rivals?
Very much so. There is a move, and NASSCOM has taken a lot of lead, talked to our industry people. They're all very sensitive and want to help. They say they will not proactively poach employees or customers. But at the end of the day, I'm very pragmatic. I know business is business. You couch it under any names. You say, I'm not proactively going, but somebody's coming to me. There is a real possibility of customers moving to other vendors and of other vendors trying to speak to customers.
One of the tests, perhaps the first real test you're going to have to deal with, is paying employee salaries for the month of January. Come the 31st of this month, will you be able to meet the salary bill or not?
That's part of the financial problem we have. We had one even before that a few days ago, where in the US, as you might know, salaries are due half monthly, and we were able to pay the salaries and the medical insurance. We are hopeful that in the next few days we will get the money infusion I talked of to be able to pay the January salaries. I have a strong sense of confidence, to your earlier question, that we will be able to do it. But that is definitely a milestone which many people, employees, customers, investors are watching. And we're working hard over the next few days as a board to make sure that this actually happens.
You say a strong sense of confidence. You're putting it at about 70, 75%?
Difficult to quantify, but yes, I would rate it at that level.
Now, the market, of course, is waiting for you to appoint a new management team. What steps are you taking to put in place a CEO and a CFO?
This is important because we need leadership quickly. We've initiated steps to look at this. We've got a number of suggestions, names. We have ourselves looked on at whom we might get. We will, in the course of the next few days, put in motion a process of finally trying to narrow down and then speak to people and, request them, persuade them to come on board as quickly as possible.
But as I understand you, the process is just starting. You're nowhere near completing it. You're nowhere near identifying the candidates that you would like to have.
We have not yet identified the candidate. I wouldn't say the process, well, we've been on board for 8 days, so it's true the process just started, but it will take a few days more. It's not going to happen now, and I'm not sure when exactly the person will come on board. We may have to look at interim arrangements, and we're looking at those possibilities too.
The newspapers report that the board is also looking for buyers for Satyam. Is that how you see the long-term future of the company?
Again, I'd be hesitant to make a specific comment, but I would say in general, we are keeping all options open. And one of the options certainly is to look at people who are interested in acquiring or buying.
One of your colleagues, Tarun Das, said on Tuesday that you do have offers to buy Satyam from both Indian and international companies. Is that really the case?
Many people have been talking to many of us, some mostly informally. So clearly there is interest. And as I said, I repeat, there would definitely be interest because it's a company that's done well. It has marquee list of customers. It has excellent talent. And there would most certainly be buyers for it.
But these are loose, informal conversations, not formal, proper offers.
At this stage, we have not gone out to look for offers, and we will be looking at what we do in that. At the next board meeting, we will have some discussions. We've had some informal discussions. There will be more definite discussions as we move ahead.
The company, of course, faces perhaps as many as 12 class interest lawsuits in America. You could end up facing more. The damages that you could be stung for at the end of the day could be incredibly large. Do you really think that you can find buyers in this situation?
That's going to be the challenge. You know, there are, of course, very clever legal ways of taking care of this, which has been done in the past. So there are examples, and one would have to see how to do this. There may be buyers who are willing to take that on. There may be buyers who want a certain kind of legal formulation or a legal restructuring before they do this. And that's why I said options are open to see how we go about doing this. There's also, I want to stress, the distinct possibility that the company is revived and takes off on its own with a new management.
So
and
you
that
may not
option
need
is open
buyers.
too. You may not need buyers. Distinctly possible.
Mr. Karnik, let's take a break there. In the limited time available, I want to come back and broaden the discussion and talk to you about the impact Satyam will have on the IT industry and the lessons that we need to learn. That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an interview with Kiran Karnik. Mr. Karnik, let's broaden our discussion. You've been president of NASSCOM. What impact will the scandal at Satyam have on the Indian IT industry?
You know, frankly, I think none.
Literally none?
None.
You mean that?
I mean that. There have been scams around the world. The Indian IT industry is known for good governance and good standards, and I don't see one bad apple, however big and large it is, whatever the aberration is, as really in any way tainting the name of the Indian IT industry.
All right. Satyam happens in the wake of the terrorist strike in Mumbai, in the wake of the international liquidity meltdown, and just weeks before a seminal election in India, the outcome of which is not just uncertain, but many people believe could leave India with a fragmented, unstable government. What impact, therefore, will Satyam have on investment into India?
You know, I think the good sign is the way that it's been handled so far, and this gives investor confidence. In fact, I see this as being very positive. The fact that these rare things, when they happen, which happen all over the world, we can handle, we can take care, we make sure that delivery continues, work continues, is going to bring greater investor confidence and not less.
So you're saying it's not Satyam that counts, but the speed and efficiency with which it's being handled that will give investors confidence?
Absolutely.
But is it being handled with the sort of speed and efficiency you talk about? Many people say that there are too many agencies, too many cooks. There was a delay in arresting the Rajus. For 48 hours they weren't arrested. Thereafter, there is a sort of strange silence from the government, which is not reassuring. So is that efficiency there?
That's not the signal I'm getting from outside. I think the outside world is seeing this as being handled well, quickly and decisively.
What about something else? Does Satyam suggest that Indian corporate governance and regulation failed at every level? Not just management, not just auditors and banks, but possibly SEBI's oversight, perhaps even the government. Won't that put people off India?
No, I don't think so, because I don't agree that the systems have failed. We may have to look, are there loopholes? But I think the systems are there, the checks and balances are there. If there has been collusion, if there's been a problem, that would be a problem. But otherwise, the kind of systems that exist, the checks that have been there are strong, and I think they're good. We may have to tighten some of them, but overall, I think we have a strong and robust system in place, both internally within companies and through SEBI and the government.
Picking up on what you're just saying about tightening certain areas, does Satyam suggest that India needs new rules and regulations, or does it suggest that we've got enough rules and regulations, we need better enforcement?
We need better enforcement, we need better ethics.
Better ethics?
Absolutely.
In other words, you're suggesting that people in positions of corporate power behave unethically sometimes?
Absolutely. Some of them do, sometimes. Fortunately, very few people, very little time, but yes.
Is the reason why we need better enforcement the point you've just made, that some people in power behave unethically, or is it to do with wider issues such as the relationship between corporate and political India, or the fact that family-run businesses tend to be feudal, or the fact that our regulators themselves are sometimes weak and often inexperienced?
No, I think our regulators have been doing a great job, particularly in the financial area. We've got to look at other dimensions of this. Part of it is pervasive corruption in our society. Now, this particular case may not relate directly to that, but I think the atmosphere of corruption is strong and needs to be tackled very seriously, whether it's in relation to corporate governance or in relation to terrorism.
What about family-run businesses? Do they need to make a more conscious effort to behave along professional corporate lines?
You know, I think that's necessary, but I don't think that it's related to this specific issue. But yes, in a broader sense, I do think family-run businesses need to look at what they need to do to bring in more professionals and for the family to step back a bit.
My last question, let me quote from the Financial Times. It says, in the future, Indian companies will have to go that extra mile to show they are above board. Would you agree?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I think they are already, in the IT world particularly, they are that extra mile ahead.
So in other words, the Indian corporate sector doesn't have to sit back and fear Satyam. They don't have to really worry. Satyam can take care of itself. They're not affected.
Yes, they need to try and be even better always, but they're not seriously affected, no.
Mr. Karnik, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.